The International Fellowship of Christians and Jews has been on the ground in the Holy Land for more than 40 years, providing food, shelter, and safety to those in need. They deliver meals to the elderly, help build bomb shelters in vulnerable places, bulletproof ambulances, and donate life-saving equipment to hospitals. And that's only scratching the surface of their work. I implore you, I urge you, please join me in supporting the Fellowship in this life-saving work. To help the Fellowship continue this urgent work, please go online to levinforthefellowship.org. That's Levin for thefellowship.org, and make your tax-deductible gift today. It's urgently needed. That's levinforthefellowship.org.
Mark Levin and the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews bring you On the Front Lines.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Levin. This is our Ifcj, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews Partnership Podcast, Episode 4, with our friend Yael Eckstein. She is the president and CEO of Ifcj. I think it's an absolutely magnificent organization on the ground in Israel, on the ground in Ukraine, helping Jews with the support of Christians and Jews and people who really do need help. You know what, Yael? It's interesting to me. We get no stories, by the way, in America of the needs of the Jewish people in any of these countries. It's amazing. It's as if everybody who's Jewish in these countries, upper class or upper middle class, but there's a lot of people who are suffering as a result of these wars, right?
Oh, yeah. First of all, Mark, thank you so much for having me back on. I always love doing these podcasts with you and speaking to you, and I always end up being encouraged, inspired, and learning new things. So thank you for having me back, first of all. Yeah, it's something that people don't talk about enough, I think, that the Jewish community, specifically in Ukraine, since the Russia-Ukraine war began, is suffering in a huge way. The people who stayed behind in the former Soviet Union after the Holocaust are the weakest of the community. They're the people who weren't able to put their lives back together after they lost everything in the Holocaust and decided just to go back to where they were raised. And many of these people ended up living very poor, isolated lives, and now they're elderly and have no one and nothing. And so actually we just, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews just is in the middle of our distribution as I speak, $9 million in winter heating to the Jewish community, specifically the elderly. And for many of these elderly across the former Soviet Union, it's the difference between life and death. So you could talk about the needs in the former Soviet Union for the Jewish community. In Israel, of course, the need for security, basic bomb shelters, or to equip our hospitals to be bomb-proof. Just today, there was another ballistic missile from Yemen that was launched at Israel. So the needs, unfortunately, are endless. But the positive side is that we have millions of friends around the world who are not only praying, but are acting in order to provide for these needs through the fellowship.
This brings us to, I think, a very important point. This is our 4th episode, but I don't feel like we've given a fulsome history of your organization, your late father's role in founding the fellowship and so forth, and it really is fascinating. It's very important. Would you like to briefly talk a little bit about that?
I would love to, because I think it's an amazing thing to look back at how this organization got started over 40 years ago. And sometimes I look back and I say, I used to say to my father died of a heart attack suddenly 5.5 years ago. And before that, I would say to him, Abba, you're a prophet. And he'd say, I'm not a prophet. I'm a man with a mission who followed God's calling on his life. So It was 41 years ago that my father was a young rabbi and he was sent by the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, to gather support against the Nazi march that was going to happen in Skokie, Illinois. Many of the listeners might remember that. It was a big thing that they were trying to show free speech, and so they were marching Nazis through Skokie. And my father, a young rabbi, naturally went to the Jewish community to gather support, but the Jewish community was so small relative to the larger population. And it was then that Christians came, not just local Christian, but Christian leaders in America at the time, like Pat Boone and Pat Robertson and Jack Hayford. And they said, Rabbi, we want to stand with you against the Nazi march. And it was through that darkness, you can say, that God spread the biggest light and started a new reality of millions of Jews and Christians starting on a new foot. What my father saw was that this is a different Christian community. This is a different generation of Christians who aren't trying to convert the Jews, who aren't trying to kill the Jews, who don't have any ulterior motives. They just want to stand with the Jews and bless the Jews. And what that means is that they want to pray for the Jewish people. In Israel, they see the words of the prophets, of Isaiah and Jeremiah coming to fruition, and they want to play a part in that. And that's when my father founded the fellowship. And so originally it was just going to be actually communication, bridge building, but it was the Christian community. It was when the Soviet Union fell who said, we want to help the Jewish people go home. And from that first step 40 years ago, the fellowship today is the largest philanthropic organization in Israel. We help over 2.1 million people a year, and we are the voice of over 700 million Christians globally around the world who pray for Israel. They're entrusting the fellowship to let the people of Israel on the ground, the Jewish people, know that they're not alone. And if I can add one more thing, Mark, I think we see the importance of this strategic partnership, this friendship, this brotherhood. I think we see it more important now than ever before as the rise in anti-Semitism globally is terrifying. And we see community after community turning their backs on the Jewish people. Within this darkness and within these very difficult times where it feels like Israel and the Jewish people are friendless, it's specifically this evangelical Christian community that has been steadfast in their friendship, refuses to turn their back on us, and continues to let their voice, prayers, and actions with the Jewish people be stronger than ever now than before.
That's so true. That is so true, and it's actually quite wonderful. But even if you look at the Middle East today, you look what's going on in Syria, you now have these terrorists who knocked off Assad, and now they're taking aim at the Druze, the Kurds, and the Christians. There's hundreds of thousands of Christians in Syria, and Benjamin Netanyahu, as far as I know, he's the only world leader that says we got to do something to protect these people, right? Very important.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. It's very important and it represents, Mark, what Israel has known forever, that it's not a war of Jews versus Muslims or Israel versus the neighbors. It's not about land. This is a global war of those who sanctify life versus those who are chasing and worship death. And so we see in Israel, there are Muslims and Druze and Christians and all different religions who live in Israel and stand for those values of sanctifying life. And we see that we are surrounded by enemies who are chasing death. And when they're chasing death, we see Muslims killing Muslims. We know in the war in Syria, there were over 500,000 innocent civilians killed, over 6 million refugees. And this is largely a war also of Muslims on Muslims. So it's not a matter of religion, but Israel is dedicated to protecting every single person, no matter what religion they are, which is why in Israel we have such a huge population of Christians, Druze, Bedouin, Muslims, and they have full equality. So what's happening in Syria is disturbing in many ways, and I think it also leads to the potential, I don't know if this potential will come to fruition, but it leads to the potential that maybe there'll be a change in Syria after 50 years, and maybe there'll be a new leadership that will work with the West, and maybe there'll be a new leadership that will have relations with Israel. I think now is when I say, when all the cards are up in the air, that our prayers are needed more than ever.
Even when you look at Bethlehem has changed so significantly in a decade. It was a majority Christian population town, and now it's a majority Palestinian town, and they don't even celebrate Christmas there anymore. This is the birthplace of Jesus. I just point this out because it's so important to have this relationship, Christians and Jews, the Holy Land, so much ancestral history for both faiths in this part of the world. When we come back, we'll take a little break here. How did all this conflict begin in the Middle East against the state of Israel and so forth? Just a brief history. It's really quite fascinating, in fact. I'm here with Yael Eckstein, and we have partnered with her wonderful organization, the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. If you want to learn more about them, go to ifcj.org, ifcj.org. And by the way, this is the perfect time of the year to make a tax-deductible gift so the people in Israel, Ukraine, the Jews can get food, can get clothing, can get what they need just to survive through this winter time. So I would encourage you, ifcj.org. Please check it out. You're going to love this organization. We'll be right back. As you all know, the Holy Land is under attack every single day. The people of Israel are suffering. Along with the many Americans who stand with Israel, I want to help in any way I can. That's why I'm partnering with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. The fellowship has been on the ground in the Holy Land for more than 40 years, providing food, shelter, and safety to those in need. They deliver meals to the elderly, help build bomb shelters in the most vulnerable places, bulletproof ambulances, and donate life-saving equipment to hospitals. And that's only scratching the surface of their work. And as anti-Semitism continues to rise around the world, the people of Israel and our Jewish brothers and sisters need us now more than ever. So I implore you, please join me in supporting the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews in this life-saving work. To help the fellowship continue this urgent work, please go online to levinforthefellowship.org, Levin for thefellowship.org, and make your tax-deductible gift today. That's levinforthefellowship.org. Welcome back. I'm Mark Levin with Westwood One, and we're here with our friend Yael Eckstein with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. This is our podcast partnership. This is episode 4. I hope you've been enjoying them. If you missed the first 3 episodes, you can go back and check them out too. Yael Eckstein, the conflict in Israel, certainly the more modern aspect of it. How did this all begin?
Well, I think, Mark, that there's always been a Jewish presence in the Holy Land, and that's something that is missing in the conversation and is critical to understand. My family goes back 11 generations in Jerusalem. From the time the first and second temple were destroyed, many people find that hard to believe, but there's always been a Jewish presence here. And so we talk often about Palestine, and we have to remember that it was under the Turkish rule, it was under the British rule, but that the conflict that we're experiencing now, I don't think has anything to do with religion per se. The conflict in Israel began with the conflict on the Jews, and we see that wherever the Jews were, there were attacks on them. So you can go back to wherever there was a main Jewish population. You can go back to Spain and you see the Inquisition. You can go back to Europe and you see the Holocaust. And so the most important thing to recognize when we talk about the conflict in Israel is that Israel was established in 1948 as a response to the global anti-Semitism against Jews wherever Jews found themselves. Through all of these atrocities, the Jewish people weren't able to defend themselves because they didn't have a country. They were living in countries like Spain, like Germany, like Europe, like the former Soviet Union, like Russia, where they were integrated into the population, very much like Jews are integrated into the population of America today. And suddenly you see that there's anti-Semitism, that Jews are singled out, and that Jews have no way to defend themselves. The most important thing to remember is on top of the biblical prophetic reality of Israel being established in 1948 after 6 million Jews were burned in gas chambers, including my own family members, I think it's important to remember Jews have always had a presence in Israel since the first and second temple were destroyed, and majority of the Jewish community was exiled and spread across all 4 corners of the earth. And also, Israel is a response to the rise in anti-Semitism. So it's no wonder now that we have so many enemies that are trying to attack us. So, of course, we know about the 1948 war, that when Israel was established, it was attacked by all neighbors on all sides: Egypt, Transjordan, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Yemen. They all attacked newly formed Israel. And, of course, we had the 1967 war, the Six-Day War, where Jerusalem was reunited. And within all these wars, within all of these attacks, including October 7th, can I say, we see that they tried to destroy Israel, and in the end, it only made Israel stronger. And so on October 7th, Hamas, who's a proxy of Iran, tried to destroy Israel. They launched the worst attacks that the Jewish people have known since the Holocaust. And what's happened since October 7th in the past 15 months is that almost all of the Iranian proxies have been destroyed by Israel. Hezbollah has been destroyed. Hamas has been destroyed. So I think that you can look at it through a practical way, or practical eyes, but you have to see the story of Israel through spiritual eyes as well. Just like Joseph, who was thrown in a pit by his brothers, but it ended up leading to him becoming the Pharaoh and being able to save his kingdom from famine, that from something so dark came so much light. I think that's what we see with the people of Israel as well. We're attacked. They try to destroy us, but our light and our hope ends up being stronger than ever.
It is remarkable what's happened since that horrendous day on October 7th. And the enemy clearly miscalculated. And Israel, the government of Israel, has been under enormous pressure from Europe, from the United States, from international organizations, not to win. In other words, Israel's always supposed to sue for peace after it's attacked. The enemy is not defeated. The enemy rebuilds its capacity, and then it's attacked again. But this time, the Israelis and their government have said, no more. That's it. We draw the line here. October 7th was so horrendous. We're not going to deal with this anymore. And now you see them collapsing all around you, right?
You see it everywhere, Mark. It's rather... I think only God could have come up with a story like this. Who would have thought that Syria would fall? That, Hamas, of course, Israel left the Gaza Strip in 2005. We took every single Jewish person out of the Gaza Strip and said, you want a country? Here, you have Gaza. There's not one Jew there. Build something amazing. You have the coastal town. Build a hub for tourism. Have good education. Have good economy. We're here to support you. Israel started educating the people of Gaza, giving them health permits that they can come and get treated in Israeli hospitals. The hope for Gaza was so huge. And then Hamas terror organization ended up taking over. They ended up having, on one hand, democratic elections, but on the other hand, they killed any of the other people who were running against them. They burned down any economy, decided to invest in terror, and since 2005, they built an entire Gaza Strip enclave of terror that's defined by the tunnels that they've been hiding weapons in and the tens of thousands of rockets and drones that they've acquired. And because of their attack, which tried to wipe out Israel, it ended up turning the tables. Israel was surrounded by enemies and hundreds of thousands of precision missiles launched at our cities. Israel, the size of New Jersey. And we've been fighting war on 7 fronts. Tiny Israel against hundreds of millions of adversaries, enemies, huge countries. And it's nothing short of a miracle that we can't forget. Definitely sitting here in Israel, we can't forget it for a second, that we've experienced as a miracle, that we've been able to nearly wipe out almost all of the rockets that are surrounding us, almost all of the Iranian proxies, which led to a weaker Middle East when it comes to Iran's allies, which led to, after 50 horrible years, the downfall of Assad. And so we're experiencing and living history now as we know it. And Israel is on the forefront of taking very huge risks in order to say the world cannot be held hostage by these Islamists. Not Nasrallah, not Yahya Sinwar, and not Khomeini in Iran.
Very, very well said. When we come back, why does this matter to the Christian community? All that's taking place, the fact that Israel is now on the offensive, why does this all matter to the Christian community? Now, there's a lot of reasons that it does, but I want to hear from you. She's Yael Eckstein. She's the CEO, president of International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. If you want to learn more about them, and I encourage you to do it, go to ifcj.org, ifcj.org. I'm Mark Levin with Westwood One. We have our podcast partnership. This is episode 4. Our program's called On the Frontlines, and you really should check out their website. And given the time of year that is, especially, we'd be incredibly grateful, and the people in Israel would be incredibly grateful if you could consider a gift, a tax-deductible donation to IFCJ. They're on the ground. They're actually doing things that are very, very important, which is why we wanted to partner with them. We'll be right back. As you all know, the Holy Land is under attack every single day. The people of Israel are suffering. Along with the many Americans who stand with Israel, I want to help in any way I can. That's why I'm partnering with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. The fellowship has been on the ground in the Holy Land for more than 40 years, providing food, shelter, and safety to those in need. They deliver meals to the elderly, help build bomb shelters in the most vulnerable places, bulletproof ambulances, and donate life-saving equipment to hospitals. And that's only scratching the surface of their work. And as anti-Semitism continues to rise around the world, the people of Israel and our Jewish brothers and sisters need us now more than ever. So I implore you, please join me in supporting the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews in this life-saving work. To help the fellowship continue this urgent work, please go online to levinforthefellowship.org, Levin for thefellowship.org, and make your tax-deductible gift today. That's levinforthefellowship.org. Welcome back. I'm Mark Levin. We're here with Yael Eckstein. I'm with Westwood One, and she is with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. I really encourage you to check out their site, ifcj.org. Check out their site, particularly this time of year. We have Hanukkah and Christmas, and there's a lot of people suffering as a result of this 7, maybe 8-front war now in Israel, and any help that you could give them would be just fantastic. And so why does all this matter, this conflict and who wins and so forth, to the Christian community around the world, and to the United States for that matter?
I think it's a great point, Mark, because a lot of times people look at what's happening in Israel as a question. Why should I care about what's happening in Israel? And I think there are a lot of answers to that. First of all, the values that Israel stands for. You know, Israel stands for freedom. Israel stands for diversity. Israel stands for democracy. We all know that in the areas that are under the rule of Palestinian Authority in Israel, for example, Ramallah, Nablus, Jenin, Gaza, there's not one Jewish person who lives there. And you compare that in Israel to over 2 million non-Jews who live in the only Jewish country in the entire world. And so you have number of synagogues in the West Bank and Gaza at 0, a number of mosques and churches in Israel at hundreds, over 500 inside of tiny Israel. And you look at the Christian population in Bethlehem, like you alluded to before, it was 80% Christian in Bethlehem under Israeli rule. And since 1995, when the Palestinian Authority took control, it fell below 10%. And so if you care about the Christian community in Israel and in the Middle East, Israel is the one that protects them. But I think on top of that, or in addition to that, the threats that Israel faces, whether you feel it directly right now or not, are the same threats that America faces. You look at the Islamists who want to take over the world, and they say it themselves. First, they're going for the Saturday people, which are the Jews, and then they're going for the Sunday people, which are the Christians. First, they're going for the little Satan, which is Israel, and then they're going for the big Satan, which is America. And so you look at it through the values, that Israel stands for the values that America and Christians stand for. You look at it through politics, that Israel is fighting this war in the Middle East so that you don't have to fight it on your home front. And then you have to look at it through spiritual eyes as well, because Israel isn't just another country. Israel is mentioned in the Bible hundreds of times. It's the only place in the entire world where God himself gave a name to. It's the only place that God himself gave prophecies of, after thousands of years of exile, one tiny nation will return. The Jewish people, as we know, right now, we 16 million Jews in the entire world. That's tiny. We shouldn't even be around with all the persecution that we've been through. And after thousands of years of exile that we're reunited with Israel, it's only because God willed it. And especially for Christians, if Christians want to get to know Jesus better, you have to know Israel. You have to know the Jewish people and the traditions that the Jewish people have preserved that Jesus himself lived by, studying the same scriptures and rabbis that Jews today still study. So I think the story of Israel, whether you look at it politically, whether you look at it spiritually, whether you look at it through values, it's a story that unites or should unite all people in the West by standing together to stand on the side of life, to stand on the side of goodness, stand on the side of light, especially as we are facing this darkness that no one can deny is growing at a terrifying pace and threatening to overtake us all.
That's so true. You know, our country, the United States, was founded on Judeo-Christian principles. And the vast majority of the Second Continental Congress, of the delegates, when they voted on and passed the Declaration of Independence and signed it, were Christians. And same with the Constitution, Christians. And when you look at later the Bill of Rights, the First Amendment, free exercise of religion, Jews have benefited enormously in this country from the Christian community. And I think the Christian community has benefited enormously from Jews, particularly in the Middle East, Jews who are fighting and protecting the ancestral homes of Jews and Christians, right?
That's exactly it. That's exactly. And something that people also forget is that Israel wasn't established in 1948. The Jewish people had sovereignty over Jerusalem for over 1,000 years, if you take into account Joshua and the First Temple and the Second Temple period. To put that in comparison, America isn't even 250 years old. And so you can say that we are indigenous people. We ruled this land for over 1,000 years. And after years of exile and wandering, we're coming back and giving freedom to all the people who have been in the land. That I think it's a story of hope and inspiration. I think it's a story of values, of light at the end of the tunnel. And like you're saying, America was established exactly on those same principles.
And I would encourage people who are listening to this program, if you can, if you have the time, if you can afford it, to visit Israel. Visit the Holy Land. Look at these places. The more they dig up around the city of David, you can see they point to where the people followed, the people prayed, the people worshipped, and also where Jesus himself was believed to have walked, and the pool they've now uncovered at the bottom of the stairs. It's really quite remarkable to go there and touch it and see it. And you do this probably every day, pretty much, or you've done it a lot. But I want to get back to this one thing, though. This idea that the only people who are suffering are the people that the Israelis are fighting. The Israelis are suffering, too. Missiles being fired into their country. It's a very small population. Families having to say goodbye to their fathers and mothers as they go off to war. Some of them don't come back. Some of them come back horribly injured. Their businesses are in dire straits. The economy in Israel's a very difficult situation. You live this every day. What do you see there? Am I explaining this properly?
You are, unfortunately, but to see it with your own eyes is something different. Just yesterday, I went to go visit wounded soldiers. There are 13,000 wounded soldiers just from the past year in Israel. Talking about a population that's 10 million people in the size of New Jersey. And so you have 13,000 people in their young 20s without limbs that have lost arms and legs. And so the fellowship is there providing special vehicles that are handicap equipped that they can go and get the physical therapy and care and community that they need. We are placing bomb shelters at every single bus stop because when children are waiting for their school bus in the morning, rockets are launched and they have nowhere to find safety. We're bringing food to elderly. There are still elderly now who are living in cities that were very hard hit by rockets and rocket attacks. They haven't been rebuilt yet, and there's no economy. There's no grocery store open. And so our soup kitchens are bringing them their meals every day. We had a soup kitchen in Kiryat Shmona, just a mile away from Lebanon, where Hezbollah is. It had a direct rocket attack, and yet within 24 hours, we were up and providing thousands of meals still. We figured out a way to make and prepare those meals and distribute them within 24 hours. We had a volunteer who was injured by a missile. None of these things stop us from being on the ground providing for the needs, because the needs, like you describe, are huge. In 20 years since I've lived in Israel, and maybe you could even say since the establishment of the State of Israel, there have never been so many people that are in need of the basics, from bomb shelters to food to help by being an injured soldier that doesn't have, that's missing some of the limbs, to hospitals that need to have their ICU and delivery unit be protected against missiles, to ambulances that need to be shrapnel and bulletproof. The needs are endless, and the fellowship is there on the ground meeting all those needs that I just spoke about and more.
Your fellowship is really fantastic. I mean, what your father created and you're carrying on is just exceptional. International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, ifcj.org. Please check them out. Please give a helping hand. This is the season to do it. And the great thing is your gift is tax deductible, so you'll get a significant percentage of it back. And so this is the way I feel, you folks in this audience who listen to me and listen to this program, this is the way I feel things ought to be done, through private charities. And ifcj.org is a fantastic private charity, International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. Yael Eckstein is doing a fabulous job, and I want to thank you, Yael, and just keep up the great work.
Thank you so much, Mark, and thank you for everything that you do. I want to wish you and your family and your listeners a very happy holidays and a happy new year.
And likewise. So this is the 4th episode of On the Front Lines with Yael Eckstein of IFCJ. I'm Mark Levin of Westwood One, and we'll see you next time.
To learn more about the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, visit ifcj.org.
As you all know, the Holy Land is under attack every single day. The people of Israel are suffering. Along with the many Americans who stand with Israel, I want to help in any way I can. That's why I'm partnering with the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews. The fellowship has been on the ground in the Holy Land for more than 40 years, providing food, shelter, and safety to those in need. They deliver meals to the elderly, help build bomb shelters in the most vulnerable places, bulletproof ambulances, and donate life-saving equipment to hospitals. And that's only scratching the surface of their work. And as anti-Semitism continues to rise around the world, the people of Israel and our Jewish brothers and sisters need us now more than ever. So I implore you, please join me in supporting the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews in this life-saving work. To help the fellowship continue this urgent work, please go online to levinforthefellowship.org, Levin for the fellowship.org, and make your tax-deductible gift today. That's levinforthefellowship.org.